the same corruption was found at in the courts of the Rajputs, like the Mughals. The British took its advantages. The British established their control over the Rajput territories, the Rajput rulers. So this is about the Rajputs. And next point, the Sikhs. What is about the Sikhs? What did the Sikhs do? The Sikhs, under the guidance of Sikh Guru Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th and the last Sikh Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, the Sikhs had become powerful. Under the guidance and leadership of Sikh Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, actually he was 10th and last Sikh Guru. Under his leadership, the Sikhs had become very powerful. Though the Sikhs were known as, peace-loving race, yet they had to instill in them the martial spirit. The martial spirit, why? Because they wanted to fight against the persecution of the Mughals. Hence, the Sikhs organized a military brotherhood. The military brotherhood's name is Khalsa, known as the Khalsa. And when the Mughals had to suffer great loss, the Mughals were becoming very weak. Right that moment, the Sikhs, the two foreign invaders, Nadir Shah and Muhammad Shah Abdali, invaded the Mughals respectively. First Nadir Shah and second Ahmad Shah Abdali. They invaded the Mughals for 2 times. Ahmad Shah Abdali for more than 2 times, means for at least there is no evidence that for how many times Ahmad Shah Abdali invaded during the end, under the weak successes of the Mughals. But it is said that Ahmad Shah Abdali invaded the Mughals for so many times. But when the Mughal emperor had become vulnerable by the invasions of the 2 invaders, Nadir Shah and Ahmad Shah Abdali, right that moment the Sikhs rose to power. The Sikhs took control over 2 states of India, Jammu and Punjab. And then the Sikhs soon organized themselves into 12 political groups known as missals. 12 political groups known as missals. And then the leader, under the leader of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, under the leadership of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, Maharaja Ranjit Singh actually was a leader of a missile. The Sikhs established, their own political and military organization, Khalsa, according to which later the Sikhs also organized 12 political groups known as missals. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh was a leader of 1 missile. But later on, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, united all the 12 missiles and founded the Sikh kingdom in Punjab and declared himself to be the ruler of Punjab during the end of the 18th century. So during the end of the 18th century, the rule under the Sikhs in Punjab had left a great impact in the history of India. But they were unable to manage the British because the growing influence of the British also made them stop. And next one, the Marathas. Next then the Marathas. The Marathas rose as the most powerful kingdom after the decline of the Mughal Empire. After the decline of the Mughal Empire, Shivaji from the very, very beginning was determined to end the rule of the Mughals, and that attempt he started taking during the period of Aurangzeb. When Aurangzeb remained busy in crushing the influence of the Marathas, after having taken one wrong decision, the Deccan campaign, and lost all his glory and image, and spent a lot of money in suppressing the revolts of the Marathas, Shivaji took its advantages. But after the death of Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb, Shivaji set free all the states from Maratha control and established his rule there. And under his leadership, the Marathas declared themselves an independent state. Shivaji carved out an independent kingdom and near Pune, which was his capital. And afterwards, Shivaji also occupied some important forts and territories of the Mughals after the death of Aurangzeb. The Marathas went on to become important rulers in the south, but was unable to do it so because of the death of Shivaji. After the death of Shivaji, there was none to unite the Marathas into a nation, into a race of India, so that they must establish an all-Indian empire throughout the country. But ultimately, after the death of Shivaji, a number of prime ministers, they wanted to be independent. They wanted to be independent and assumed the title Peshwas. So the Peshwas or the prime ministers started occupying various areas under the rule of the Peshwas. The Maratha kingdom, occupied certain Mughal territories, and some states of India came under the control of the Marathas, like Malwa and Gujarat in the west, like Bengal and Orissa in the east, like Rajasthan and Gujarat in the west, Punjab and Rajasthan in the north, and Malwa and Gujarat in the west, in Bengal and Odisha in the east, and last of all, Hyderabad and Mysore in the south. They occupied. So these were the areas, these were the states of India, one by one occupied by the Peshwas under their rule, and some states which were not directly occupied by the Peshwas, but they had established their control over there. These states were Odisha, Bengal. They had to pay tribute, means taxes. Sardeshmukhi and Sardeshmukhi, two taxes they imposed on them, and the states had to consider their demand of paying annual tribute to the Peshwas. The taxes were Chaud and Sardeshmukhi, and ultimately the states where the Maratha could not establish their control but could not annex it to their kingdom, only they had acknowledged the influence of the Marathas or Maratha sovereignty by paying two taxes, Sardeshmukhi and Chaud. And the military campaigns of the Marathas against the other states also enraged the rulers of regional kingdoms. The Marathas, one after one, under the Peshwas, started controlling over various regions of India. Initially, they decided to set up their rule in some states. Moreover, as the Marathas moved northwards and tried to control over the Mughal Empire, they had to face a lot of trouble, because the Marathas, under the weak successors of the Aurangzeb, were trying to regain their power and prestige. That's why the Maratha had to fight against them. A major problem arose when the Marathas took over the provinces Lahore and Lahore and Sirhind, which were occupied by Ahmad Shah Abdali, the Afghan ruler. The Afghan ruler Ahmad Shah Abdali occupied two territories, Lahore and Sirhind, but whenever the Marathas took over control over Lahore and Sirhind, on hearing the news of it, Ahmad Shah Abdali, declared war against the Marathas, and as a result of it, the third battle of Panipat was held between the Marathas and the Afghans in the year 1761. And this revolt, cemented the fate of the Marathas. Why? Because the British had been eagerly waiting to see the result of the war. Who would defeat the Marathas, or who would defeat the Afghans? The Marathas or the Afghans, or the Afghans to the Marathas. So a war was inevitable between the Marathas and Ahmad Shah Abdali, the Afghans, and in that battle, in the third battle of Panipat in the year 1761, my dear students, Afghans defeated the Marathas. The Marathas were badly defeated. The Marathas considered a great defeat at the hands of the Afghans in the third battle of Panipat in the year 1761. And as soon as the Marathas, considered defeat against the, Afghans, the Marathas lost their political image, the political respect they had earned after the defeat at the hands of the Maratha Ahmad Shah Abdali or Afghans. So their dream to replace the Mughals, and rule over India was shattered, and the British took its advantages. So the British, who had been eagerly waiting to set up a rule, the Maratha kingdom started disintegrating, and this helped the British to establish their rule in India, their empire in India. And ultimately, only because of that reason, the third battle of Panipat of 1761 nailed the coffin of the Maratha Empire in India, and the British, established their empire in India. The British, who had been eagerly waiting to see the result, the consequence of the battle of third battle of Panipat between the Marathas and the Afghans, as soon as the Marathas considered a defeat and Afghans won the battle, the British, established their control over India as a political power. Up to this, my dear students, thank you.